How's it going, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of the GG Sports Podcast. Another week, we've got another guest on. We've got Danchat of the Purple Pain Forums. To start off here, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and tell us what you do.
Thanks for having me on, Casey. My name is Danny. I work at Purple Pain. I've been contributor for about 6 years now. Been writing articles, doing depth chart analysis, going over all sorts of stats. Recently, I've been working on a simulator for simulating games and outcomes of seasons. So yeah, Purple Plain's a great place to be. It's a kind of a close-knit community, message boards.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on there. Obviously, we're affiliated with all of you, but it is a fantastic website forum thing. And you guys do such a good job and have such in-depth information. And I advise anybody who's watching this to go check it out, especially if you want like straight statistics, in-depth information. It's fantastic. There's a Twitter thread on the side that keeps updates with all the Twitter stuff. It's just a great place where you can just get all the Viking information that you can find, and not just that, but being a part of it. And the whole Viking family thing. We've mentioned this before, that as Viking fans, we're all in this together. We're all trying to create what in my opinion, is to show the world that we're the best fandom in sports out there. So
yeah, I would agree. So how did you become a Vikings fan? Let's start there as well.
Yeah.
First year I was really fully paying attention was 2009. So that was kind of a magical season. I'd always been a baseball fan before, but once I fully paid attention in 2009, I just kind of got hooked. So, and then 2010 happened. My goodness.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the same way, because after that 2009 season, I'm just like, what's everybody talking about? Why are they saying the Vikings suck so bad? Like, this looked easy. We're going to do this every year. And then, was slapped in the face of reality after that one. But
Brett Favre effect, Adrian Peterson effect.
Yeah, man.
I mean, those were good times. Luckily, we're about to get into some better ones.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully.
We can only hope, staying optimistic.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of which, how did you feel about the new hires? Were you happy? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle? Where were we at?
I definitely like the O'Connell hiring a lot. Wanted an offensive coach not just because it's the trend, but it's just so frustrating having to get a new offensive coordinator and sometimes a new system every other year. We really need the consistency, and getting O'Connell was great. I would have liked Harbaugh a lot. Also pretty high on Byron Leftwich. Don't know why we didn't interview him, but
right.
So yeah, I like the O'Connell hiring. Kind of okay on Adolfo Mensa. It's kind of a big question mark with the the first fully fledged analytics GM. But it was time to move on from Spielman, so there was a lot of surprise in Purple Pen and probably all around Vikings media that Spielman actually got fired instead of not getting promoted. So
yeah,
it's nice to see a new face in there, though. He's done a lot of Spielman-like things, so.
Yeah, I would agree. Those trades they didn't feel very Spielman because of who he traded with, but definitely the movement around the draft did feel very Spielman-like. Which
I would say that's the only difference that I've seen with him compared to Spielman, is that he wasn't afraid to trade back up in the draft. We've talked about it before. So that's something, like, he obviously wasn't afraid to trade back or up. So it's kind of like he's not just out there trying to accumulate all the picks he can, and he's giving up all these early picks. You can tell he's trying to get picks while also using that to go get the guys he wants and stuff like that. So that part was kind of a good thing. But I also agree on the analytics thing. It is going to be interesting with him having that mindset. I do like that he's very collaborative with everybody around him. So he has other people in there that he's willing to take their opinions and stuff. People who probably do have a more deeper player background. So that's kind of good. So hopefully he just, he kind of makes a final decision, but he gets all these different mindsets to come to that conclusion there. So
yeah. And obviously let's just get this out of the way now because it's probably going to come up at some point. So we'll
Yeah,
just
that was
ask
us.
about it. With these guys, they came in. The biggest decision I feel like they needed to make was what to do with quarterback Kirk Cousins. So we'll let you have the floor. What are your feelings on Kirk Cousins as the Minnesota Vikings quarterback?
Well, he's an above average quarterback, and he helps us maintain our gravitational pull to 500. So, I didn't love the extension, but there also weren't a whole lot of other options out there. There wasn't going to be somebody at the where were we? The 12th overall pick to full on replace him.
Right.
I kind of hope next year we do look for our full on replacement because I don't think Kellen Mond is that guy. But I actually did do a article on moving on from above average quarterbacks, just going over the last 10 years in NFL history and seeing what happened. And it was either all neutral or positive outcomes, moving on from guys like, say Ryan Tannehill, Phillip Rivers, guys of the same caliber as Kirk Cousins. There's not as much downside as people think. Some people in Purple Pain are like, oh, we're going to become the next Lions. And it's just really not going to happen. It takes so much more than downgrade at quarterback to become a destitute franchise. So, Kirk is fine. He can be, on his best days, he can be a top 5 quarterback. And then on his worst, he's more maybe around number 20 or whatnot. But on the average days, maybe 12th, 13th best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, that's fantastic insights, honestly. Especially going into detail with comparing him to guys like the Phillip Rivers and the Tannehills that you mentioned, and then seeing how they, just seeing, like, I do agree that people think that if we lose a guy like Kirk Cousins, now, like you said, now we're automatically like, we don't have a quarterback and no one else is going to be coming in. This is something in the offseason that I always was talking about, because I would talk about a guy like Jameis Winston, where if we got rid of Kirk Cousins and we ended up picking like a 1-year cheap contract on a guy like Jameis Winston, even though he's definitely up and down, but if him coming in, is it really going to change our record a ton, in my opinion? Or a Marcus Mariota? My opinion, I don't think it's that big of a deal yet, because I don't think Kirk Cousins is that guy who's, he's not that 100% franchise quarterback yet. We haven't seen it. I agreed with you that I was personally, I was hoping to trade if the trade was good enough. I didn't want to just give him away for free. I'm hoping next year we do kind of look for that guy, and I'm also hoping unless Kirk Cousins, this is the year he steps up for us and ends up being that guy and shows that he's ready to be that franchise quarterback, because it wouldn't be the first time we've seen it late in a career. But
yeah, and they scared me a little, because as I said, I'm here on Kirk. I'm more up than down, but it did, because I thought for sure in the interview process with Kwesi and with O'Connell that the first thing to be brought up is, what do you want to do with Kirk Cousins? So the fact that it took them so long after the season ended to make that decision, and they could have had it in their minds all along, and maybe just Kirk's camp was being, but how Kirk has been with his contract negotiations. So part of it to me could have been that, but the fact that it took them so long to get something done is what kind of made me nervous. Like, maybe they went into this and didn't have an idea what they were going to do with them or something. So maybe there's disagreements, they talked it out. I don't know, but I thought for sure that'd have been like the first thing to get done. Like, okay, here's what these two want to do with Kirk, so let's get it done. And again, who knows? Maybe it could have been something both camps, like, they wanted to get it done. There's little disagreements here and there before the deal was made. I don't know. But it was a little bit concerning. But overall, it's just looking at, like you said, looking at the other quarterbacks that were available. I mean, obviously, Jameis Winston, I think, is not as good as Kirk Cousins. But
yeah,
I do think there is something to be said that a quarterback like him probably won't turn your record that much. Because, with all of his interceptions, he's shown he's not, risk averse. Like, and that's kind of a knock on Cousins, that sometimes he's a little too risk averse in certain games. And Jamie, even last year after he took those risks in the Packers game, you pointed out how right after he said, like, maybe I might have taken a few too many risks. And sure enough, after that, you didn't see as many of those throws the rest of the season. So I think he does get in his own head too much. He is worried about the stats for the money purposes. But I don't know. I think the big thing with bringing him back is, like, you could tell that they wanted to keep this team together and be competitive. So if you get rid of him and start over at quarterback, these receivers have to learn a whole new quarterback and new system. That's tough. So I do think keeping Kirk was the best way to keep the whole band together. Because if you weren't going to do that, then you would have to completely scrap it and start over, in my opinion, at least. So I don't know. Lots to be said about it. Obviously, it's the only thing people talk about right now. Slow news cycle at this time of year is Kirk Cousins. What do we do? And is he going to be good enough? Time will tell. When the season starts, we'll see if O'Connell can get the best out of him. I think he can. I hope he can, because that would be amazing. But time will tell, I guess, at the end of the day, right?
And then I did have another question. So away from, that's other old offseason news, Quasi, KOC, Kirk Cousins contract. I guess we could, if we got Zadarius Smith. I guess before moving on too much forward, what do you think about the Zadarius Smith signing and maybe our free agents, and then maybe a little bit of what did you like with the draft and some of the players that we drafted?
Yeah, I definitely like the Zadarius Smith signing. Kind of hard not to with how the contract is structured, because there's so little guaranteed money. So this is kind of all upside, no downside. That is the main signing that I think is just, all positive. The rest are, it's kind of mostly placeholders. Like, let's see, Hicks. Phillips is nice, but he might, he's been playing 40% of the snaps with the Bills. He's good at stuff in the run, but he can't really rush the passer. So, yeah, then the free agent approach did kind of remind me of 2021, where, I think a lot of us were pretty positive on it. And then the season came, and it turned out a lot of these guys were, not as as much of difference makers as we thought they were. As for the draft, I didn't love the trading down, but when it actually came to the players, I do like them a lot. I actually, in my final mock, I actually had them taking Booth in the first round after trading down. So getting him in the second round is a steal.
Right.
As long as he's consistently healthy, I think he'll pan out. Sign is a nice safety. I think he'll pair really well with Harrison Smith. And I hope they can keep using Cam Bynum as a third safety.
Agreed.
Didn't love the Ingram or Asamoah draftings. I mean, they're okay. I'm just not totally convinced. Maybe it's just because of Wyatt Davis and Chaz Surratt the last year. But new GM. And,
right.
I think those two draft picks were definitely very bad news for Davis and Surratt.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, there's bodies there, especially at the right guard. Hopefully they take an approach where you try to figure out who your best option is now and going forward with all the bodies there, and not kind of have bias towards Ingram because you drafted him compared to Wyatt last year because you didn't draft him or whatever. Hopefully they don't have anything like that. And you now we have Surratt, Troy Dye, Asamoah, and Blake Lynch and all those guys. So, and we have some Hicks there too now, but we have some openings obviously in that linebacker room. So if we can find a couple of those guys to step up, at least we have bodies, and hopefully one of those guys ends up being like a future stud for us at both those positions. The right guard would be huge. If we figure out that right guard spot, man, we are feeling a lot better of our offensive line than we have in the past 10 years or something, like something crazy.
But speaking of the offensive line, it sure does feel like they think they can get something out of Garrett Bradbury, which scares me a little bit. I know he's put on some muscle. He said, I think he got himself up over 300 pounds finally. 315, I think, is what he said he's at now. But I was hoping we'd have upgraded that position, because I think I've been on record saying that I'm not, obviously I think a lot of Vikings fans feel the same way. Not impressed with Garrett Bradbury up to this point. Good in the run, a good run blocker, good at getting to the second level. He's quick, which was advertised when you drafted him, but also to hold up against a pure pass rush. He just, especially those big nose tackles he has to face, especially, even in the division, he had a couple of them. We saw what happened with Akeem Hicks. And is it Kenny Clark for the Packers? Is that his name? I believe. Yep. You see what happens with guys like that, where he gets pushed back into the lap of Kirk Cousins and can't hold up. So hopefully the muscle, maybe getting some better guard play to his right side will help as well. Remains to be seen, but I was kind of hoping that they would have made a move. I mean, obviously we talked about JC Treader, which obviously if JC Treader's not signed yet, there's got to be something up with him. I know they said injuries. He might even be thinking about retiring. Who knows at this point, but I don't know. It concerns me a little bit, but, just like we're being this whole season, hopeful, fingers crossed, and maybe a new regime can get something out of a player who just up to this point has been a bust from first-round pick.
Yeah, and I would like to say on Bradbury, I'm pretty down on him. I don't think he's going to be our starting center past 2022. I think the reason why we didn't, at least in the draft, we didn't draft a replacement is because there were only really two good center prospects in Linderbaum and Jurgens. Both of them went pretty quick. I think Jurgens went middle of the second round, and so I think Kwesi decided to go guard in the second round instead of going center. So I think it was just more a matter of you can't fill all of your holes or put a
Yeah.
prospect on your roster at every position that you eventually want to replace.
Mm-hmm.
And then
And
I'd
then
like to,
also Chris Reed.
Mhm.
Chris Reed had. I mean, I don't think he's ever started or played a game in a game at center, but I know he's practiced at center before in his career, so that's an option as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that and offensive lines and who might start and might not going into training camp coming up here, it seems, what do we got now? Like 4 weeks, 3 weeks, feels like 3 months, 10 months. So training camp battles. What would you like to see, or what are you excited for? Anything like that? We got obviously the cornerback battle. There's Cameron. Everyone knows or thinks, well, probably most likely Patrick Peterson's going to get a spot, but then you got Booth, who is injured, so it'll be interesting. And then Dancer, then obviously seen in Cam Bynum. You got that guard spot that's pretty much wide open. It seems like the center spot. I mean, who knows? Maybe Garrett Bradbury isn't going to be the starting center going into 22. Who knows? We got a whole offseason to figure that out. I mean, what else do we got here? Wide receiver 4 now with ISM injured and what's going on there. That was my favorite. Otherwise, is there any other linebacker? I think there's something that I don't think Hicks has 100% spot on that spot. But what do you think?
Yeah. I'd also like to mention when it comes to the day 3 picks at corner, I am actually very high on a Caleb Evans out of Missouri.
Yes.
He had a 9.5 RAS, so super rangy and fast. Charlie Campbell had a second to third round grade on him. So I actually think landing him in the 4th round was a really nice move. Also to, finally get us some depth so we don't have to, throw out some lackeys at corner again.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how the rookies are going to be used at corner because it's a pretty steep learning curve in the NFL. So I think Dantzler is going to be starting day 1. And then I'm interested to see what will happen on the D line. So it's also going to depend on how often they're going to 3 guys or 2 guys. Because it sounds like our nickel package might only have 2 defensive linemen. But right now there's definitely going to be a battle between Armin Watts, James Lynch, and they signed Jonathan Bullard. He's got a lot of experience. And then don't want to mess up the pronunciation. Otamemlo, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, he could be in the mix. And then I also just look at the depth charts. I don't think we have a super clear-cut backup nose tackle. So in my 53-man roster mock, I actually had I think it's Tyrese Stevenson making the team as our backup nose tackle. Don't know if that'll happen, but maybe something they'll sign a veteran to fill that hole.
Yeah.
Didn't Armon Watts, wasn't he technically like a nose tackle last season? I think he's a little undersized to play a true nose, but
especially in 3-4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a fit at 3-4 defensive end.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking too, yeah.
How about guys like Janoris Robinson, right? Would he be able to play that spot? It's really weird going into a 3-4 because I just do not have enough, I don't know enough about 3-4 defenses. We're learning now as we've been going on since we've known that that's what's going to happen. And that was actually a really good point. That's probably the biggest question mark on our team, maybe, is that spot where Armin Watts might be sitting in that 3-4 spot or whatever. So I do think that's pretty interesting. But yeah, guys like Janoris Robinson, I know he's been working out with Danielle Hunter, and he was supposed to have all this potential coming into as a rookie last season, and he was injured.
And Patrick Jones as well.
Patrick Jones, he played some But yeah, Janoris Robinson still, he could come in and be a guy that surprises everybody, you know?
I had actually started a thread on Purple Paint about the title of it was "Who will be the next KJ Osborne?" Basically, the next player to do nothing rookie year and then suddenly big contributor.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority landed on Janarius Robinson as that guy. So
Okay.
be interesting to see.
Yeah. I could definitely see it. Obviously, had a lot of talent, but yeah, the injury, kind of put a wrench in things. So,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of KJ Osborne, is another battle that we have here going to training camp is that punt return spot. I mean, obviously, Kenne's got kick return not locked down, but when it comes to punt return, there's options. I mean, if ISM gets back from his foot injury in time, which it sounds like he will, I think they said they're pretty hopeful he'd be ready for training camp, or at least part of the way through training camp. KJ Osborne could take that spot. Now he's playing more on offense. I doubt it. But you got him there. You got Jalen Naylor, of course. You got did Ty Chandler return any kicks in his day in college at North Carolina when he was in college?
He definitely did kicks. Don't know about punts.
Okay, but maybe they could toss him in there. So there's options for that
Did
spot.
You say Wilson already too?
I did not say Wilson. I forgot about Albert Wilson as well.
But he hasn't done a ton, but he's fast and stuff.
Yeah, there's options for that spot. So it'll be interesting to see who takes that job.
Oh, Albert Wilson, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they worked out D.D. Westbrook but didn't sign him. So that
I guess they said he had another visit lined up that day or something, and Albert Wilson took less money and was cool with, because I think they said they offered D.D. Westbrook a contract actually, but he wanted to go elsewhere, at least test the water, see what he could get out there.
And you can only imagine us signing DD was probably to have that depth in that punt return area more than anything. So the fact that we didn't sign him and then we signed Wilson, is that why Wilson is going to have a shot at that spot? Maybe he only's taken like 3 punts in his career, but you never know.
Yeah, for sure. So that'll be interesting to see as well. And I know we talked about training camp battles in another video of ours, and obviously the kicker battle ended with, unless they bring in somebody else, but they cut Gabe Burchick and they obviously Greg Joseph. I felt like he was going to win that anyway, but they said Burchick had a pretty bad week. I think he missed like 7 kicks or something that week. So obviously that's going to get you booted pretty quick when you're a kicker. So but I think there's a ton of intrigue going into training camp, and I'm excited to see where things go. Obviously, you got to cross your fingers we avoid that injury bug, because we've had that. Obviously, we saw what happened with Teddy back in the day. It can derail a season fast if someone gets hurt in training camp. And so far we've been pretty good. I know luckily we're not the Bears and the Commanders. I heard they both got fined for having too strict of practices during mini camps. So luckily we're not in that boat. I mean, I don't think I've heard anybody getting hurt from those teams, but the injury thing is going to be huge.
I know we need a healthy Irv Smith. We'll really need that's Casey always brings up a great point that there's not much depth behind him. So if he goes down, I mean, we don't have even a Conklin to rely on. So I think that should be of concern. So hopefully he just has a healthy season. I really, really, really want to just see a healthy season, a whole season of Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. That's like the big one. We haven't seen Danielle Smith, barely seen him for the last 2 years, and Zadarius Smith was going through his. We didn't really see as much Zadarius Smith either, but that was good before. But now, obviously, that's not good now. So it'd be awesome just to see if they have that whole tandem all year long, and it's one of the things I'm looking forward to the most, probably coming up to the season.
Yeah, for sure. So let's end it with this record prediction. What's yours?
I'm thinking 9-8.
9-8.
Personnel pull to 500, and there's a whole lot of factors. I felt like things were pretty predictable under Mike Zimmer the last couple of years. We usually beat up on the bad teams and we lose to the good ones. I think we'll see a little more variance when it comes to that. There's going to be a learning curve for O'Connell. But yeah, I think factoring in injuries, I think 9 wins is pretty fair. Not too positive, not too negative.
I could see that. I mean, get Kirk Cousins. I mean, there really is no 500 anymore, but at least he could say, "Hey, I was over 500 this season." You guys can't call me a 500 quarterback anymore, right? I do think that people are undervaluing the coaching change, because a lot of people say this team won 8 games last year. Like, how is a coach going to make that big of a difference? I think so. And I know we had SK of the Purple Code on here a couple weeks back, and he brought up the good point of, like, let's say a guy like Kirk Cousins, who, whether we do well or whether we do poorly is probably going to for a large part revolve around his play. And, he brought up the analogy of, someone like going to work. And when your boss doesn't want you there, like, you're not going to work as hard. Your work isn't going to be as quality. But I think the fact that he's going into a scenario where he knows, like, the coach does want him there, I think if anything, that's only going to help him. I think and I think that's going to be a big reason why his game elevates. I think he's going to be confident, be willing to make some different, just go out there and play how he wants to play without having to worry, go back to the sidelines and have your defensive head coach read me a new one, So I do think the coaching change is going to have a bigger impact, and who knows if it's going to result in wins right away. But I do think you'll see, and we're already kind of seeing it on, in the offseason here. The players are, they're much more vocal about how much, like, they're enjoying coming to work. They're hanging out together outside of practices. Adam Thielen even said it too. It's like, it's just a whole different atmosphere at TCO now. So I think it's going to do wonders. Like I said, I don't know if it'll result in wins first season. I'm really hoping it does. I'm crossing my fingers that it works out that way. But I do think we're going to start to see a shift that in the next couple of years, if Kirk Cousins or not, I mean, I do think that after this season, for sure, they have to start seriously considering life after Kirk. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to have to start developing a guy. Kwesi and O'Connell need to find their guy that they want to take over the reins after Kirk is officially gone. But I think you're going to start seeing steps towards this team hopefully becoming a contender again. And you see the things with, I've said it since the draft. You see Kwesi, he's drafting for needs now, but he's also drafting for replacements down the road with their first few picks, even with Sean eventually someday replacing Harrison Smith. You got, I think, Asamoah, I don't know. We'll never know if he's, we will know if he's going to be the next Eric Kendricks, but I think he could be a replacement for Kendricks. Plus, you're seeing Booth or Caleb Evans. Potentially, those two guys are going to be fighting to replace Patrick Peterson after the season, because I don't see Peterson back another year. So I think they're starting to build towards the future while also trying to do the best they can to stay competitive now. So,
yeah.
So I'm ready.
Agree.
I'm ready for the season. What would you say? Training camp? What is it? Middle of July? Is that when it normally starts? First week of July, second or third week of July, or something like that. So from there, things are going to go fast. So I'm excited to see it. So anything else from you guys?
How many wins?
Well,
so
we did a record prediction episode where we were both a little bit. Jamie had the perfect.
I'll be honest here, though. I'll be honest.
The 17-0 was very.
I said, and Super Bowl win. Don't forget about that.
The whole playoff.
Hey, you got to have some optimism out of there somewhere.
For me, I think if everything goes perfect with injuries, quarterback play, everything goes the way that I want it to go. Obviously, I thought 13-4 was reasonable, but I think 10 wins is realistic.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say 10 wins realistic, but I would probably say, to me, I still do think we'll get at least 12 wins. And the reason why is, the coaching, we don't know how that's going to roll out. I do like how the players are out vibing and stuff like that. But from a straight talent standpoint, I think we have the talent to easily be a 12-win team. And that's hoping from, like, Mike Zimmer. And even last year, we only lost there's 8 games where he lost by like less than 5 points or whatever it was. And that was like this with the dysfunction going on and all that stuff in the background and injuries with Danielle Hunter and stuff like that. I think our team is better than it was last year. And going into the season last year, maybe it was just biased Viking fans, but I was hyped. I thought we had all the pieces to go a long way. And I feel like we're even closer to that this year. I think we have a stronger offensive line this year. We have Danchat, who's another year older, more experience. Brought Zadarius Smith, and then, more depth on cornerback for sure. The rookies, but still safeties. Our secondary has mad depth with so much young potential players, with also keeping the guys like the veterans like Patrick Peterson and so Harrison Smith. And so our offensive line and our secondary, 2 of our biggest issues probably, I think is an improvement. So I just think from a straight talent point of view, we have the talent to get those wins. Now it is up to how is it going to work under the new coaching.
Sure. So, I'm excited to see what happens. Obviously, once training camp hits, things are going to ramp up, and we got football through February,
I know.
So
I'm ready. I'm ready
about it. So that'll do it for this episode of the GG Sports Podcast. Once again, Danchat joined us from Purple Pain Forums. We'll put the link to the website down below in our description. As for us over here, if you want to check out some of the other stuff we have done, you can click the links right up here. Check out those videos. Most importantly, subscribe to GG Sports Podcast. At this time, we're about 11 subscribers away from 500. So help us get there. And we will see you guys in the next episode of the GG Sports Podcast.
Skol Vikes.
All right. Thanks for having me on.